Today we're going to be in Psalm 9. So we're going to have to get the energy up a little bit here. I know a lot of you guys were out at the quinceañera last night. If you know Jared and Carla Rains, their daughter Kaylee had her quinceañera last night. And so that was a lot of fun. It was very loud, a lot of dancing. If my voice cracks, it's not second puberty. It's because the music was so loud. We had to talk to really loud to try to communicate to each other. So that's kind of where we're at. But today we're in Psalm chapter 9. And as we jump into Psalm 9, there's going to be a theme that, again, we started with communion, and it's the theme of remembrance, the theme of remembering the great works that God has done in the lives of his people and in his world. And so as we open up to Psalm 9, starting in verse number 1, this is what we read. I will give thanks to the Lord with my whole heart. I will recount all of your wonderful deeds. I will be glad and exult in you. I will sing praise to your name, O Most High. Remembrance here, as David is talking about all of the wonderful works of God. In this moment, he's saying, God, you've done a lot of things for me, and I need to remember those things. As we look at the life of David again, we could look at it as one of chaos in some ways, because David did live a very chaotic life, constantly running from Saul, constantly running from Absalom and other people, constantly fighting enemies that were surrounding the nation of Israel. Always, it seems like a life that was in flux and consumed by battle. But if you look at it from the other angle, we see David's life as a life of provision. We see that though David was constantly pursued by forces far mightier and far greater than him, he continued to evade them. He continued to have safety. He continued to have success. That though David went up against enemies far stronger than him, from Goliath to the nations that were surrounding him, the Philistines and the Ammonites and the Moabites, as they all came against the nation of Israel, we see that David consistently had success and was able to deliver Israel out of the hand of their enemies. We could look at David's life as one that was of woe and sorrow and trouble, or we could look at David's life as one that is of provision. And here, David chooses to look at his life as a life of provision, a life where he recounts the goodness of God in times past, a life where he recounts all of the wonderful things that God has done for him, that God has done for the nation of Israel, all of the ways that God has blessed them as a people. And so David opens up this psalm by saying, I want to remember all of your goodness in my life. This is such an important thing for us because we say it here pretty frequently, but as people, we have a tendency to forget what we should remember and remember what we should forget. Do you ever have those intrusive shower thoughts or those 3 a.m. thoughts? You know, you get up and then you lay down in bed and for whatever reason, your brain's like, hey, remember when you were in the 3rd grade and you slipped and fell in front of all of the kids in class and everybody laughed at you? And that's just like in your mind, and you're like, why am I thinking about the 3rd grade? I'm in my 30s. This doesn't even make any sense, right? But like your brain latches on to some of those things and it just brings some of those embarrassing moments to mind. And you're like, why am I thinking about this right now? But at the same time, whenever we stop and try to think of things that we should be grateful for, sometimes we have trouble. Sometimes we're like, I don't know, what's going good in my life? What do I have to be grateful for? What do I have to be thankful for? And if we're not careful, we're going to remember the things that we should forget. We're going to remember all of those bullies from the 3rd and 4th grade. We're going to remember all of those times whenever things just didn't seem to work out. We're going to remember all of those awkward moments. And we're going to forget those things that we really should remember. All of those times that God came through for us. All of those times that God blessed us. All of those times that over and over again didn't make sense, but he provided and he made a way for us. It's so important. And here, as David says, I will recount all of your wonderful deeds. We have this idea in Scripture of setting up stones of remembrance. We read this in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 7. This is at the very end of the period of the judges where we have Samuel, who is the last of the judges, comes through, and the nation of Israel is under the oppression of the Philistines. They are coming and they are raiding the Israelites. They are putting them to forced servitude. They are destroying their crops and their animals. They are forcing their will upon the people of Israel. And it is a bad time for the people of Israel. And during this time, God raises up Samuel to go out and to help gather the people, muster the people, and then lead the people into battle against the Philistines. And because of the work of the Lord, the people of Israel, though they were outnumbered, though there was no reason they should have won, they had a great victory in and over the Philistines, and they drove the Philistines back. And so on that day, Samuel took a large stone and he set it up as a pillar, and he called it Ebenezer, which literally means rock of remembrance or stone of remembering. And he said, I'm going to put this pillar here so that whenever we face hard times as a people, whenever we face hard times as a nation, whenever we look at things and say, is God going to come through? We can say, thus far, God has helped me. And that's what he says as he sets up the stone. He said, God has helped me all the way to this point. Wherever the Philistines had pushed us back, where they had oppressed us, now he has given us space. And so far, God has helped us. And we set this stone here to remember the works of the Lord. In 1 Samuel chapter 7, verse 12, it says, Then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shean and called its name Ebenezer, for he says, till now the Lord has helped us. And over again, we'll see throughout the Old Testament, whether it's whenever the people of Israel are crossing over the Jordan River and they each take a stone and they put it up as a pillar to say, this is what the God of our fathers has done for us. He has brought us across the Jordan into the land of promise. Over and over again, we see these standing stones where they remember God did something here. And it's important for us to have similar things in our lives. Do we have marks in our life? Do we have moments in our life where God has come through, where God has delivered, where God has moved in mighty ways, where we say that had to have been God because it couldn't have been anyone else? And we remember those things and we say, yes, I will call those things to mind whenever things get hard and the future is uncertain, because to some extent, the future is always uncertain, right? Anybody know how this week's going to go 100%? I guarantee you don't. You might think you do right now. You might think, I got my week planned out. It will not happen that way because something always comes up. Something always happens. And so even trying to look 7 days or 5 days or 1 day into the future and say, this is what the future is going to hold, we are wrong 100% of the time. And so what do we do whenever the future is so uncertain, whenever we're like, man, I don't even know what tomorrow's going to look like, much less next week, much less next year. And there's all of these different problems and situations coming on me that I don't know how they're going to turn out. What do we do when we can't look to our immediate future and know what's going to happen? We look to the past. We look to the past, to the times whenever God was faithful, the times that he carried us through, whenever we said, I had no idea how I was going to make rent that month, but somehow God just helped me. I had prayed for that person for so long that they might have peace, that they might see the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I thought, never. And yet they did. I prayed for that person who was addicted in one of the many ways that we become addicted as humans. And I just thought, man, there's no way. They're way too deep in addiction. And yet God did something in their lives. And so whenever we're uncertain about the future, whenever we're uncertain about, I don't know what tomorrow holds, we can look to the past and we can see all of the different times whenever God came through for us in beautiful ways. And looking at the past, we can see what's going to happen in the future. That in the same way that he came through, in the same way that he made a way, in the same way that he was God, and that I thought that situation was going to destroy me, and yet I'm still here today, he's going to make a way for us in the future. Whenever we're uncertain of our future, we can see the same one who holds our past holds the future, and he will make a way for us. And so that's what David is opening up this psalm as a reminder for us. He says, I will remember all of your wonderful deeds. I will be glad and exalt in you. I will sing your praise, O Lord Most High. I will look to the past and I will remember all those times of deliverance, all those times of blessing, all those times where it could only be you and you made the way for me. And so then David recounts some of those times when he says, hey, listen, this is what happens. And he says, when my enemies turn back, they stumble and perish before your presence, for you have maintained my just cause. You have sat on the throne, giving righteous judgment. You have rebuked the nations. You have made the wicked perish. You have blotted out their name forever and ever. The enemy came to an end in everlasting ruins. Their cities you rooted out. Their very memory of them has perished. Here we have a reminder of what we have been reading in Psalm chapter 1 and all throughout the book of Psalms, that there is a contrast between those who live wicked lives opposed to the way of God and those who live righteous lives following after the commands of his word. We see that those who are wicked in Psalm chapter 1, it says that their memory perishes, that they are forgotten. But we see that the righteous, the Lord knows their ways. We see that while the righteous are like a tree planted by streams of water that puts down deep roots, and it bears roots and it bears fruit in its season, and it is able to withstand the wind and the rain. It endures, while the wicked are like chaff on the wheat that is blown away by the wind. And so David is remembering and reminding himself of that. He says, I'm going to remember your mighty acts. I'm going to remember all the times that all of these people who sought to destroy your people, that all of the times that those people came against the nation of Israel and they said, we hate you. We're going to blot you out. We're going to wipe you out. You're not going to be in this land anymore. That it was because of you that you turned them away, that you sent them away, that you defeated their armies, that you wiped away their name even from the face of the earth. I remember the works that you have done. I remember the truth that the wicked will perish and the righteous will endure, even whenever it doesn't seem like it. And so as we continue, we read now in Psalm 9, verse 7, but the Lord sits enthroned forever. He has established his throne for justice. He judges the world with righteousness. He judges the people with uprightness. The Lord is a stronghold for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. And those who know your name put their trust in you. For you, O Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you. It tells here of God not only judging the nations, but judging them righteously with justice, that he has established his throne for righteousness. And it gives us a beautiful phrase here. It's one of my favorite phrases that we've come across so far in the book of Psalms. It says, those who know your name put their trust in you. Those who know your name, those who understand your nature, those who have seen your character and your beauty, put their trust in you, because whenever we see the glory of God, whenever we see the beauty of the face of Jesus Christ, how could we not love him? And so just as a reminder, last week we took just a moment to think about God and all of his works and the ways that he's created the universe and all of the things that he has done. But today I want to remind you of a few of the ways that Scripture refers to God, a few of the names that it ascribes to God, that it tells us of his nature and of his works in his world. One of the words that we see describing God is Elohim, which literally just means God, or the creator, mighty and strong, the one who made the world, who set all things into motion. As we read last week, when I think about the heavens, the moon, and the stars that you set in motion, we see that this is who God is. He is the one who has made all things. We see that God is described as Jireh, the Lord who will provide. We see that in the midst of battle that God is called Yahweh Nisi, which means literally the Lord is my banner, that he is the rallying point whenever all of the forces of the enemy and all of the troubles of this world seem to pile up on us. We come and we rally around the banner of Christ, and we are sure to move forward because he is the one who is fighting for us. We remember all of the different ways that the Lord is called. He is called the Lord who makes us holy. He is called the Lord of our peace. He is called the Lord our righteousness. He is called the Lord of all of the heavenly host. He is called God, the everlasting God. He is Jesus Christ, who is referred to as the Comforter, the Counselor, Almighty Father, Prince of Peace, the one who will carry the government on his shoulders, and of his government and of peace there will be no end. He is called the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. And in Philippians chapter 2, verse 9, starting off, it reminds us that Jesus Christ has been given the name that is above all names. It reminds us, therefore, God has highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of the Father. So as we read here that David writes, those who know his name, put their trust in him. What an amazing God. What an amazing God, the God who has all of heaven's armies at his command and yet cares for us. The God who created all things in this world and yet created us special and loves us and knows us by name, knows the hairs on our head. The God who has made all things, sustains all things, holds all things in his hands. The God who, whenever a young woman was out in the middle of the desert with her son and thought, this is it, we're going to die of thirst. And she hid her son under a bush. And she went away thinking, I'm going to die over here and I don't want my son to see me die. That the Lord came down and showed her a well of water. And she said, surely you are a God who sees. You are a God who sees me even whenever I feel like I have been forgotten. The God who parted the waters of the Red Sea and yet knew Moses by name face to face. And he said, he is my friend. This is the God who we know. And whenever we know him, we can see that we can put our trust in him. Even whenever we don't understand, again, whenever we don't know what the future holds, whenever we don't know what tomorrow looks like or the next week and not at all the next year. And we say, how am I supposed to move forward in life? It's because we know the name of God. We know that he is a God who is trustworthy. We know that he is the God who created all things and sustains all things. And so he can bring us through all things, that he is a God who cares for us. He is a God who loves us. And he is a God who is powerful enough to intervene in even the most difficult situations of our lives. And so even whenever we are at the bottom of the bottom, even whenever we are having the most difficult times of our lives and we don't know what tomorrow looks like, we can look back and we can see the face of Jesus Christ on the cross. We can look back and we can see the works of God in creation and every moment since then. We can look back and we can see that God is a good God. And whenever we get a hold of that, whenever we know him by his name as provider and sustainer, as the one who loves us more deeply than we could ever understand, then no matter what tomorrow might hold, we know that we can face it because we can trust him. And so then we continue in verse number 11. Sing praises to the Lord who sits enthroned in Zion. Tell among the peoples his deeds. For he who avenges blood is mindful of them. He does not forget the cry of the afflicted. Be gracious to me, O Lord. See my affliction for those who hate me. O you who lift up me from the gates of death, that I may recount all your praises in the gates of the daughter of Zion, that I may rejoice in your salvation. And so here David continues to sing praise to God, and he remembers that God is one who does not forget his promises. He says, you're the God who has made all things. I look back and I remember your deeds. I remember how you have brought the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt. I remember how you made a promise to Abraham and you fulfilled it. I remember how even after 400 years of slavery in Egypt, somehow you made a way for the people to come. Even after wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, you still prepared for them the promised land, and you fought their battles for them, and you brought them into this land. I will sing praises to your name, and I will remember that you are a God of justice. In our prayer time this morning, we talked about all of the difficulties right now going on in our world. And again, if you turn on the news, it does not take much to see some of the troubles that our world is currently facing, whether it be in Israel or Iran, whether it be in Palestine or Ukraine or Russia or the EU or everywhere else in the world that's constantly in flux. And we look at these situations and we see people being hurt and harmed. We see people being afflicted and oppressed. We see people fearing for their lives and not knowing even where their next meal is going to come from, much less what the next weeks and months are going to hold for them. And sometimes we can be tempted to despair and just say, God, what's going on in the world? God, what's even happening around us? God, are you listening? Are you watching? God, where are you at? And here David reminds us that if we look to the past and we see how over and over again he has delivered his people and he has freed the oppressed, he has set up those who were cast down low, that over and over again he restores those who are beaten down, We can remember that God reigns from a throne of justice and that God is working all things, even the things that we don't understand, out in all of history, that he might work justice in his world. And David holds on to that even for himself. He says, you who avenge blood is also mindful of them. You do not forget the cry of the afflicted. And then David puts himself in this position. He says, be gracious to me, O Lord, see my affliction. He says, this is not just a general thing of like, yeah, people can trust God. But he's saying, God, I can trust you. Like the world needs you. Yes, but I need you. Lord, you see the afflicted, and sometimes I am one of those people who is afflicted. God, you see all of the things in this world that need to be fixed, and God, I live a life that needs to be fixed as well. And you see all of those things from the macro down to the micro, and you sit on your throne above all things, and you see all things, and yet you work out all things. And in verse 14, he says, that I may recount all of your praises, that in the gates of the daughter of Zion, I may rejoice in your salvation. David has hope that, again, irrespective of whatever situation he's in the midst of, whatever he's facing at the moment, that there's going to be a time whenever he's going to be able to rejoice in God's victory. That even though it says he feels like he's at the gates of hell, he sees that God is going to deliver him to the gates of his city. From the gates of death to the gates of life. That even in the worst times of his life, he can trust that God is going to deliver him, not without pain, but without stain, as C.S. Lewis would say. Not without having to struggle, not without sometimes having loss and pain and hurt in the midst of this life, but without losing our confidence in who God is. That he can bring us through these things, through every hardship in life, with our faith intact, because we know his name. And when we know his name, we can trust in him. And so we continue on. He says, the nations have sunk in a pit that they have made, in a net that they have hid, their own foot has been caught. The Lord has made himself known. He has executed judgment. The wicked are snared in the work of their own hands. This is, in Psalm, the third time that we have encountered this idea. That the wicked, that the unrighteous, that those who are seeking to spill innocent blood and to oppress the needy and to cause harm and to turn away from the ways of the Lord, that they are setting a trap, that they are setting works about themselves. And in the midst of all of these things, eventually their foot will be caught and they will fall into their own trap. If we read in Psalm chapter 5, verse 10, it says, make them bear their guilt, O God. Let them fall into their own counsels. In Psalm 7, verses 15 and 16, it reminds us, he makes a pit, digging it out, referring to the wicked, and he falls into the hole that he has made. Again, here in Psalm chapter 9, verses 15 and 16, we read that the one who lays a snare for his neighbor, that instead he himself falls into it. In Psalm 10:2, it says, in arrogance the wicked hotly pursue the poor. Let them be caught in the schemes that they have devised. In Psalm 35, verse 8, it says, let destruction come on him when he does not know it, and let the net that he has hid ensnare him, and let him fall into it. In Psalm 57, verse 6, it says, they set a snare for my steps. My soul was bowed down. They dug a pit in my way, but they have fallen into it themselves. Here we see this principle of how God is often at work in our world in ways that we cannot see. And sometimes the way that God brings judgment on the wicked of this world, on the evil of this world, on those who are working iniquity in this world, is to simply remove his hand from them and let them lay their traps, and they end up falling into their own schemes. For example, you've probably seen this before where there's somebody who is a thief and they rob a bank and they rob another bank, and all of a sudden they get more emboldened by their success. And so they begin to make mistakes, and eventually it's their own hubris that leads to their capture. We see this with dictators, right? Where they have power and they begin to rule the country, and all of a sudden they want more power and more power and more power. And in their attempt to consolidate power and to be the ultimate power, they eventually are overthrown because they're so paranoid and they've isolated and alienated themselves so much that now they're taken out and they fall into destruction. We see the perfect example of this actually given to us in Scripture in the book of Esther with a man named Haman. A man named Haman, he was in the city of Babylon. He was part of the royal court. And as he was going through and going about with King Ahasuerus and doing his royal business, he was pretty high on himself. He was one of the royal courtiers. He was very well respected and very highly exalted in the nation of Babylon under King Ahasuerus. And yet as he went in, he was insulted in some very minor way by a man named Mordecai. He was so insulted by him, in fact, that he couldn't let it go. And so he decided, hey, I need to kill Mordecai, but that's not enough. I want to kill everybody who's related to Mordecai. I want to kill everybody from the same race as Mordecai. All of the Jews, I'm just going to completely wipe them out. And he had the power to do it. So he went to the king. He made the request. He made his plans. And indeed, he was moving in that direction. But the problem was that Haman kept on running into this Mordecai guy. And he just couldn't deal with having to see him day after day. Even at one point, realizing that Mordecai had won favor with the king. And so walking in, and the king said, hey, what should I do with someone who's earned my favor? And he says, oh, well, obviously he's talking about me. Like, of course I've earned the king's favor. So he's like, well, you should have him put on your own horse and wear one of your own robes and wear one of your own royal rings. And they should take him around town on your horse and say, so it is done to the one in whom the king finds favor. He's like, that would be pretty cool. He's like, that's the kind of parade I want. And the king said, that's a great idea. Do it for Mordecai. And he's like, oh man, this stinks. And so now Haman is having to lead Mordecai around. He's having to do all this again, his own plots he is falling into. But it doesn't stop there, because he decides one day that he just cannot wait. He cannot wait just the few months it's going to take to be able to completely destroy the Jews, to see the destruction of Mordecai. So what he does is he builds a gallows, and he builds it 50 cubits high, this huge gallows, so that he can have Mordecai hanged on the gallows. And he's super excited about it. He's like, this is the best day ever. I'm going to go to the king. I'm going to request that Mordecai be hanged, and it's going to happen. And then finally, all of my problems will be gone. But we read in the book of Esther, chapter number 7, what happens and how the Lord brought all of this down now upon the head of Haman. That as Haman goes in to have a feast with Queen Esther, who has now worked this plan with Mordecai, who, by the way, happens to be the queen's uncle. You know, just saying, pretty cool deal. So as all of this stuff happens to come about, she invites him to this feast. Haman is high. He's on cloud 9. He's thinking everything is great. The queen invited me to this feast and nobody else. And all of a sudden at this feast, the queen breaks the news. Hey, I'm a Jew. Haman wants to kill me and all of my kin. And King Ahasuerus was a bit of a loose cannon, so he lost his mind about this. He's like, say what? I mean, he just like completely went crazy, and he's like, I don't even know what to say. So he just got up and like is literally storming around the palace, and Haman's like, I'm in trouble. So he's begging, he's pleading. He goes and he grabs onto the feet of Queen Esther, and he's like, please forgive me. And as the king comes back in, what does he find? Haman holding onto his wife's feet, and he's like, oh, so now you're going to assault my wife, huh? Okay, we're going to really take care of this quick, fast, and in a hurry. And so he's trying to figure out how all these things are going, and this is what we read, that one of the king's eunuchs says this. Then Hebron, one of the eunuchs in attendance on the kings, said, moreover, the gallows that Haman has prepared for Mordecai, who saved the life of the king, is standing at Haman's own house, 50 cubits high. And the king said, hang him on that. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the wrath of the king was abated. As we look at this, and we could follow the story of Esther, and we can see in some ways the story of our own lives, we can say, man, things are not looking good for the Jews. At the beginning of the book of Esther, we see that they're exiled in Babylon, that Esther is now forced into marriage with the king, that we're not sure how any of this is working out, that all of a sudden Haman arises and he is a complete enemy of the Jews and he wants to wipe them out in complete and total genocide. He has no mercy for them, wants to see them down to the very last man, woman, and child completely destroyed. And we see No seeming way out of the situation. And so what does God do? He literally gives Haman just enough rope to hang himself. And this is exactly what we read throughout the book of Psalms, that sometimes whenever we see the wicked seeming like they're going to prosper, whenever we see the wicked and the unrighteous seeming like they are winning the day, how is God bringing all of these things about? How is God executing justice in his world when there is so much blatant injustice in front of us? And sometimes what he is doing is just allowing those people who are working wickedness to bring about their own destruction. That they are building the scaffolding that they will eventually be hanged from, that they are building the nets and setting the traps that they will eventually themselves fall into, that all of these things are working out in God's providence, that eventually he will bring all things and make all things right. That the trap that they set for others, they will themselves fall into. And this is an important reminder for us as a people in a world that is deeply broken, in a world where we are often surrounded by people who seem like they are both wicked and winning, that they are both unrighteous and doing really well for themselves. How are we supposed to reconcile those things? God's a God of justice. God's a God who judges justly and righteously. God is a God who said that the righteous man he will lift up, but the wicked he will put down. How are we supposed to say these things are true whenever we look at the world around us? And sometimes it seems like the wicked are winning. It seems like the unrighteous are flourishing. It seems like those who are doing what is against the law of the Lord seem to have at least temporary success. We remember that in the same way that God brought about the salvation of his people and the destruction of Haman, while all along, until the very last moment, it looked like Haman was winning, so he does in our world. And some of these things we get to see. Sometimes we get to see the Bernie Madoffs of this world uncovered and brought low. Sometimes we get to see the Jeffrey Epsteins of this world finally uncovered and said, we know what they're doing and we're going to call them out. And there's finally going to be at least some semblance of justice done. And other times we don't. But we look to what God has done, to his works in the past, to the truths that we know about him, that he is a God of justice, reigning from a throne that is above it all, who can see the beginning from the end, who sees all things, and he is working justice in his world. And we can say, because we know his name, we can have faith in his plan. Because we know his name, because we know that he is the provider and he is the one who loves us, because we know that he is a God of justice and of order, because we know that he is a God who will by no means let the wicked go unchecked. We can know that he will bring all things to right, even whenever we don't see it. And so we see, as we continue on in Psalm 9, the wicked shall return to Sheol, all the nations that forget God. For the needy shall not always be forgotten, and the hope of the poor shall not perish forever. Arise, O Lord, let not man prevail. Let the nations be judged before you. Put them in fear, O Lord. Let the nations know that they are but men. David closes out here with the hopeful expectation of all of those things that are yet to be resolved. He looks back at all of the ways that God has come through, all of the ways that God has set things right, all of the ways in the history of both his own life and in Israel that God has clearly made a way and shown himself to them. And he looks to the future and he says, God, because I know you, because I know your name, because I know your nature, because I know your character, I can believe that all of these things that I'm waiting on, all of these things that I'm waiting on for those who are wicked and oppressing others to be brought to justice, for those who are oppressed to be raised up, for those who are poor to be remembered, for those who are overlooked to be seen. As I wait for all of these things to be made evident in this world, I can have faith that you will do it because you've done it before. I can have faith that you will do it because I will call to remembrance all of the ways that you have been faithful and good, all of the ways that your word has not fallen to the ground, all of the ways that whenever you made the impossible possible, all of the ways that whenever everybody else thought the darkness will win the day, the unjust will win, and instead you bring about your victory. And whether I see it or not, whether in my lifetime it happens or not, whether I fully understand or not, and usually it's not, I can have full confidence in you because I know your name. Would you pray with me? God, would you make it so in our lives? Would you reveal to us in fresh and new ways every day who you are? That you would remind us of your character, that you are a good God, a faithful God, a just God, a loving God, a compassionate and powerful God, a God who is not slow as some would count slowness, but is deliberate, waiting, wanting none to perish, but all to come to repentance. Would you remind us of these truths whenever we face difficulties in this world, whenever it seems like the wicked are winning and the righteous are being oppressed, whenever it seems like this is a topsy-turvy world that is working in the complete opposite way that your world tells us that it should work. Lord, would you remind us that as we look back, as we see all of your works in the Old Testament, as we see all of the works of Jesus Christ, as we see all of the ways that you have in our own lives provided, that we can look to the future. And though we don't know what tomorrow holds, we will always know who holds tomorrow. And it is in you that we can have confidence that because we know your name, we trust you, because you are worthy of our trust. And in your name we pray. Amen. You guys, thanks for being here today. Always enjoy it. Would you just receive this blessing as you get ready to go out into your week? I have no idea what tomorrow's going to look like for you, or the day after, or the week after. Don't even know what it's going to look like for me. But whenever you are tempted to despair, whenever you are tempted to lose hope, whenever you say, I don't know what tomorrow holds and it is giving me a deep sense of dread or anxiety, would you look to what Christ has done in history and in your own life? And would you remember that he is good and he will work it out? Love you guys. We'll see you next week.